Back to another episode of the Independent Thinker Podcast. I'm your host, Terry Pittman. We're going to continue from the last episode with our good friend, award-winning journalist, Lindell Kay. He's back once again. How you doing, sir? Good. Now, last week, we kind of got off course a little bit.
I've been known to do that.
That's okay. That's okay. I enjoyed it. We got a lot of viewers, thanks to you. I want to talk a little bit.
Look at me. That's crazy. I do a radio show every week, and I like radio because I can just get up in the morning, walk out to the car, make that phone call. I'm in my underwear. I don't have to worry. I bought this shirt at Rose's yesterday.
I just painted
You
that
got me worried
picture.
about how I look.
I just painted that picture in my mind of you in your underwear.
Love eating Fruit Loops in my underwear with my Garfield slippers on.
So we were talking a little bit about the K files.
Right.
Let's get a little bit more, now that we have time, let's get a little bit more in depth about the K files.
Sure.
Can you tell us, we talked last episode about how the K files kind of came about.
Right.
In this episode, let's get a little bit deeper in some of the cases and some of the things that you're actually working on.
Sure. My goal is to be the preeminent expert on unsolved murders and missing people in Eastern North Carolina.
Wow.
Very specific.
Wow.
Right. I don't know about Texas or Florida, but I want to know. I've worked at every big newspaper in this area.
And you grew up in Eastern North Carolina, right?
I sure did. Right. So this is home to me. This is what matters to me. And I think that I think I'm on my way. I've been writing about unsolved murders and stuff for 20 years.
Wow.
We've developed a TV show on WHIG that every Thursday morning. It's going to run in prime time. They're going to chop it up, move it, parts of it to prime time.
WHIG is going prime time?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay.
So the goal to me is to reach as big an audience as I can with this, because the more people that hear about this, the more eyes on this, the more likely is that something will happen.
Give me a couple of your first case that actually started to get your juices flowing a little bit.
Sure. Well, it wasn't my idea. I had an editor come to me down in Jacksonville and said, "I need you to write about unsolved murders."
Mm-hmm.
And mostly, I looked back at what other people had done, and they mostly just take the old news and rewrite it, rehash it,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I'm going to try to do something a little different. I'm going to actually go and talk to people and look up public records and do what I can to present as much fresh information as I can to people, with the goal of somebody coming forward with information that law enforcement doesn't have. And it's worked out pretty well over the years in different places. And
so your first case, you remember it, the individual that, you kind of piqued your interest, that, you were like, okay.
Yeah, well, like I get oftentimes people say, well, how many of you helped solve and this and that. Well, the thing that you had to think about is, like, I wrote a story several years ago about a doctor that come to town, and everybody was saying that, this doctor, all the babies that he delivers is stillborn. He's a terrible doctor, this and that.
Wow.
But I reached deeper into it and found out that he was actually a expert that was called in whenever regular doctors couldn't handle the birth. So he's starting at a detriment that
Correct.
The only births he's dealing with are troubled births anyway. So he's losing more of the babies, right? Rather than looking at the ones that he saved, everybody's looking at the ones he's lost.
Sure.
And these cases are the same way. I'm wading into these cases 20, 30 years later. So the chances of solving them are very slim.
Wow.
So even one is a success. And
where do you actually start at? Like, do you start with the police reports and evidence?
Yes, it depends. Okay, so if it's an unsolved death, right? So in other words, we know. We have a body.
Sure.
We know the person's dead. The death certificate is the place to start. And most people, I learned that through experience. I definitely didn't learn it in journalism school. But I had a case where some folks were dead, and I couldn't find anything. No information at all. There was nothing in the newspaper. If it was 30 years ago. So an old retired reporter friend of mine said, "Well, have you looked at their death certificates?" And I was like, "Yeah, can I do that?" I mean,
Mm.
I was really naive back
Yeah.
then. And so every county in North Carolina has death certificates. They're public record. You can go down there and look at them. You can ask, you can make a copy of them. They charge like a nickel or a dime or whatever. You can actually take a picture of them with. We have back then I didn't have cell phone back
Right.
then when I started, but the thing is on that death certificate is how they died,
Mm.
what the medical examiner thinks the reason they died. Whether it's homicide, suicide, whatever,
Mm.
and then you've got family members, you've got occupation. I mean, there's about 40 different elements of information on that one sheet of paper.
Do you use like genealogy websites?
I have used those a lot of times. What I use those for is to track down missing people or murdered people's families.
Mm.
Because I mean, it's been so long ago. I'm doing one right now on TV. Carl Butler disappeared from here in 2005,
Okay.
and finding his family is like a whole nother missing persons case
Wow.
altogether, because they've either died or moved away.
Wow.
And I can't find them through voter registration. I can't find property records with them.
Mm.
So just finding somebody to talk to
Mm.
sometimes can be a challenge.
So where do you go when you're faced with those type of obstacles like this individual? Where do you go from there? You start like going canvassing the neighborhood that they once lived in
Absolutely.
and seeing if anybody close to them remember the individual.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. I mean, you can get the autopsy report from the state.
Wow.
You can get I usually try to gather as much information as I can through public records and
Yeah.
through interviews, and then talk to the police, because the more that I've found over the years, that the more that the more that they'll talk to you.
Right.
If you ask them, hey, what happened to Carl Butler, then
Right.
I don't know.
Wow.
But if you come to them with a lot of facts and information, they usually open up to you more.
So what is the one? I know all detectives, all police officers. There's one case that you continuously go back to. What is that one case for you?
Well, around here it's known as the Seven Bridges Road.
Oh
killing.
yeah, I remember
and that was a case where about 12 or 13 women
Sure.
were missing and then found dead.
Now they arrested someone for that.
They did.
Yeah, I think his last name was the same as mine.
It is. Yeah.
You know,
Is he related to you? Is your
He's
cousin?
not. He's not.
All
what
black
I
people.
found though?
Wait a minute, all black people don't know each other.
All black people don't know each
Okay.
other. All black people don't look alike.
My grandma told me that all black people knew each other. That if you needed to find somebody, ask one, and all of them can tell you.
We are a tight knit community. Now, I will admit that. Now, everybody with the last name Pittman in this area generally comes from that Enfield, Whitaker's,
And he had
Battleboro, that particular area.
He had
right?
family out. I mean, that's why he was. I wrote a story one time about a guy that killed a woman in North Carolina,
Yeah.
and then he drove all the way to Texas where his relatives lived.
Yeah.
And he had from North Carolina to Texas to dump her body, but guess where he dumped it at? He dumped it a mile from his mother's house, because people always I mean, there's certain truths in investigations, right?
Yeah.
People always dump bodies somewhere that they're familiar with.
Wow.
Because it's just they feel safe there, they feel comfortable there.
Yeah.
They always dump bodies somewhere they're familiar with. So in these Seven Bridges Road cases,
Mhm.
he was dumping them all on Seven Bridges Road because as a child he grew up around that area.
So there is some sort of contention within the community of whether he's the actual killer.
He killed. He definitely killed the woman he's convicted of killing.
Yeah. That's one he buried in the backyard, I think.
Well, no, he dumped her close to Seven Bridges Road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was some found in backyards along the area. I mean,
Yeah.
he definitely killed her. I mean, he was convicted of it. He had an appeal. I mean, but I think, and investigators think, although they won't comment on publicly too much, he killed about 5 or 6 of them.
Wow.
Right.
You feel that? You feel
I'm pretty confident with that, based on where they were dumped, based on how they were killed, just everything. I mean, if the DA wanted to, he could have pursued that and got 5 convictions,
Wow.
5 or 6 convictions.
Yeah.
They felt like at the time, and I mean, I've talked to Robert Evans about it a lot over the years. They felt like, well, we've got him. In North Carolina, there's only 2 punishments for first-degree murder. There's life in prison and there's death.
Yeah.
So when life in prison in North Carolina since 1993 means life in prison.
Right.
So he ain't getting out.
Right.
But that doesn't help the families of those people that are dead, and they don't. Sometimes to feel justice, you want that person to be in prison for your daughter's murder,
Correct.
and your mom's murder, not just for somebody that So, but then the real problem that nobody ever really thinks about, I think, is that okay? So if he killed 5 or 6 of them,
Who
and we're
killed the other ones?
exactly, and we're talking about 12 or 13, who
So
killed
in your investigative mind,
right?
you think that there's a killer still out there?
More than one,
Wow.
absolutely.
Wow.
I think once it got going, that
Scared them off, or
no, it was open season on hookers once the word got out that
Yeah.
there was somebody, So, well, let's go back to the very first one, and I wrote this a couple of years ago, and it didn't really sit well with some law
and
enforcement.
all this is a part of the K files,
Yeah,
correct?
right.
Okay.
And I was in a meeting yesterday with both sheriffs and the police chief.
Oh, wow.
And I want to get to that, what
Sure.
we're doing before we run out of time. But I told them this yesterday. I've always, because I hung around cops a lot,
Yeah.
right? And there's this joke that don't get caught breaking the internet at the end of the month.
Why is that?
Because they're gonna throw every break and enter in that month at you.
Wow.
So you know what I mean. So
Wow.
you don't want to get caught doing a crime at a time that they got to turn in the stats.
I've never heard that. That's new to me.
Well, you're not a criminal,
right.
So the
according to Bush dancing sometimes, man, I
Oh,
would
Lord.
say, go ahead.
So the problem here is that we had a situation where Rocky Mount was in magazines as being one of the worst cities in America.
I remember that.
They had a serial
GQ,
killer,
right?
Right? Yeah, GQ, Forbes, every one of them, really.
Yeah.
And they had a situation where they had a serial killer running around, killing people, killing women, right? And then you had people that were really trying to get Rocky Mount to a city on the rise, right? They want to get a better place. So kind of what happened in all of this was that those women just kind of got forgotten about.
Correct. Yeah.
And as we want to make a better image for our city, so let's forget about the poor women and their families who've been victimized. So when they've got one and he's convicted, they're just a creeping silence took over for the rest of them.
Correct.
Right? And I'm not pointing my fingers at anybody. And most of the guys that are in charge are gone now anyway.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting dynamic where you can't just say it was race, because we had a black police chief, a black sheriff, a black DA, a lot of black council members, a lot of black commissioners. So you can't just, it'd be a really comfortable situation to say, oh, well, it's Whitey's fault.
Right.
But I mean, it was a situation where a lot of people wanted Rocky Mount we didn't want Rocky Mount in the headlines anymore.
Correct.
And that's why they hired James Moore, because he brought those crime stats down. On paper, Rocky Mount had the lowest crime rate it had in 30-something years.
Now, some of those crime rates are in dispute. I remember you wrote about some of those.
Absolutely in dispute.
You wrote about some of those.
That's why James Moore no longer works for the city.
Yeah.
So the
CEO police chief. That was my name for him.
Well, when he got here, he demanded that he live in a gated community.
Yeah,
that was one of a police chief who demands to live in a gated community. So, anyways, he's doing well for himself now.
He's a good guy.
So he told me that last thing he said to me is, "I'll land on my feet."
He lived above me in the Douglas building until he found residence.
Really?
For a long time, man.
With all that mold and all that.
He did well,
maybe that's why he was doing. Who knows? All right, so
good guy, James Moore. Good guy.
Thing that never you said that. The thing that nobody ever really talks about, like you said, was that okay? So if he killed 5 or 6 of these girls,
right?
Who killed the rest of them?
Correct.
And if we pretend like he killed them all, then we're not looking for. Looking for who killed him.
That was easy to sweep it under the rug.
And I wrote a story about Denise Williams. It was a poor girl that died in 2003. And
she's from Rocky Mount?
She was from Rocky Mount.
A lot of those girls used to hang around the Holly Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, Carolina Avenue, that area right there.
She lived right in there. Yeah. And she was young, though. Most of those women that died, his MO, they were all 40, 50 years old, But she was 20, one, I believe, right?
Mm.
And some family members and some people in the community felt like she had been ignored.
Mm.
Her case had been ignored, so it got pushed into that group of cases, hoping that it would
Yeah.
generate more attention and all, which it did for a little while. But
Sure.
then the problem was is when the silence came, her case got,
Sure.
So I wrote about it a few years ago, upset a few people.
Yeah.
But basically what happened to her was that she sold some drugs for her boyfriend, right? Mostly ecstasy, but some other stuff. And she overdosed. And I don't know whether it was whether it was she overdosed by accident or whether they made her overdose. I don't know.
Correct.
But her boyfriend thought she was dead, so he threw her in the swamp. I mean, rather than, could have just took her to hospital, he threw her in the swamp. Well, her autopsy shows that she was not dead. She was just passed out. So she drowned in the swamp.
Wow.
And then a turtle came and ate her face off.
And did the boyfriend ever get?
He's suspect.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Sheriff Atkinson is working. I mean, they're working that case.
Good,
and
good.
and he is and don't get me wrong. I want to really say this because I'm not ever saying that law enforcement forgot these cases.
Sure.
They work on these cases.
Yeah.
We started the show by saying detectives have cases they can't let go, right?
Right.
Law enforcement are working these cases. I want to make
Good.
that very clear.
Good.
But it's the public perception that's the
Correct.
problem. It's the public that thinks these cases are over. So maybe information that they have, they're not sharing because they think the case is over with.
Which allows the
So-
K file to be a good,
That's what I'm trying to do.
to keep these people's these memories
That's
out in the
Nice
public.
segue to what we're
Yeah.
okay. So what we're doing and there's something afoot on a big scale that's beyond me, right? This started with what I wanted to do,
Sure.
and we're doing the thing with WIG, and I'm here talking to you about it now. I'll talk to anybody if I can't, just to get the idea that we need to do something.
Sure.
But there is a citizens board that's being created.
Okay. This is the information you got yesterday from your meeting.
There is a citizens board that's being created to assist with much in the way that Crime Stoppers, like if you know about a drug deal or a break-in, you can call Crime Stoppers and they'll give you
Sure.
a little bit of money for calling them, right?
Right.
This is a board that will deal solely with unsolved homicides.
I think it's a great idea. That's
Absolutely.
a start.
And when you hear the people that are involved with this, I can't reveal today,
I
but
understand.
there are some names in this community, big names in this community
Good.
that is going to impress people. And it's gonna add gravitas to the idea that we need to get this done. We've
Now
got
this
too
needs
many-
to happen. Now this needs
Right.
to happen. Sometimes the ideal of creating boards is a great ideal on paper, but the work behind it never materializes.
The guy that's in
So-
charge of this is gonna get it. He's a man.
All right, you heard it first now,
He's a man.
Lindell.
The guy
You're
that's
standing
in charge
behind
of
it, right?
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
the guy
All
that's
right.
in charge of this is gonna get it done.
All right, good.
When you find out who it is, you'll know that
I'll be impressed.
this man. Yes,
All right.
this man ain't
All right.
messing around. This
Derek
man's
is
new.
hard to impress.
No, this man is news.
All right.
Just the fact
All right.
that his name is involved with this is news.
Good,
Right.
good,
Okay.
good.
So what they're gonna do is they're gonna we've already raised $15,000
Wow.
just in a week.
That's pretty good.
$15,000 in a week to give out solely for reward money.
Good.
We're not going on trips to Miami we're not
Yeah.
we're not eating steak and lobster. I mean, this is money that's raised to give to people who call in about unsolved murders
Good.
and help solve these cases.
Now, would there be a way that the public can contribute to the pot
Absolutely.
and increase the funds?
Absolutely. And I mean, and I'm only on the peripheral of this board. That's what's great about it. This is happening outside of me. I mean, I will be putting the information out as much as I can through any media that I can to get people to call in.
Good.
But this board is being structured by business owners and by business leaders
Good.
in the community
Good.
and with, like I said, yesterday in the room discussing this, Chief Robinson, Sheriff Atkinson, Sheriff Stone.
That's a
Right.
powerful group of
Absolutely.
men right
Absolutely.
there. I like all three of them.
They're gonna and all three of them have expressed, when there's a pressure on law enforcement to solve current homicides,
Sure.
right? There's not much pressure on law enforcement to go back and dig up something that happened 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think we talked the last segment about one of the key factors in that is family participation.
Right.
If
Absolutely.
family gets involved, put pressure on law enforcement, do press releases with the news. Those things are very important.
That's what it
you know
takes.
I'm saying?
I mean, that's what it takes, and it takes it takes that constant emotional pull
Yeah.
to get somebody to come forward and say something that they know, and that's what it's all about. And that's how, DNA is great and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but in these old cases like this, a lot of times what's going to help is somebody that knows.
Speaking out.
So things change. You got your ex-wife, your ex-business partner.
Yeah.
Things are falling apart. All of a sudden, they're more willing to talk about,
Right.
that something happened. So I want to get this number out before we're done.
Go ahead.
It's 252-406-6736.
Okay, say it again.
I say it again. I got dyslexia. I'm reading it real slow.
I hear you over there, man.
252-406-6736.
Okay.
This is a number that has been created by this board.
Good.
You call this number. Your information will be taken. It will not be shared with law enforcement. It's completely anonymous. It's protected by law.
Good.
So something, you call them. The information leads to arrest. You get big money.
Good.
It's as simple as that. We're gonna solve some of these cases, and we're gonna pay some people some money.
That's good. Before we leave, I want to give a shout out to. I don't know if it's a shout out, but I want to bring these 3 individuals. They're on the unsolved murder case in the city of Rocky Mount. There's Newt Johnson. So it's critical. If people have information about that, please contact the number. There's also Dexter Johnson, a childhood friend of mine and classmate who passed away in 2006, was murdered, still unsolved. And also Tony Grant, who is an uncle of mine who passed away, who is on the unsolved murder list.
Yes.
So what you're doing is wonderful, Lindell. I'm really excited about the opportunity that these guys are presenting to the public. So thank you for appearing on the show. Once again,
I like to come back as we
come back,
along.
man.
Yeah.
You on fire this week.
We
got to talk a little bit about that too. You're on fire this week.
Yeah, I'm ready. So as we move along, I'd like to come back and share our progress.
Yeah, please do. Hopefully, I can get those guys on the show too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so thank you guys. This ends one segment of Independent Thinkers. I'm your host, Terry Pittman. Saying goodbye to my good friend Lindell Kay. Until the next time, thank you.